Welcome to this session. I'm going to talk about actually two of my favorite things, Power Platform and IoT, and a bit of AI as well thrown in there. So what this session is about using the Power Platform, which is a low-code development tool or platform for developing apps and automations in business, and linking that with IoT. And I'll explain how this came about in a minute, but you've heard about me. I don't need to show this slide anymore, but my contact details are there. I love that intro. Yeah, I'm going to have to steal that intro if I'm going to use that again. So I'm going to describe the problem that I faced, that somebody came to me and said, we need to be able to do this. We need to be able to use IoT, but we don't really want to get into the depths of Azure. We're not skilled in Azure. We haven't got the skills to maintain it. And we want a very simple little proof of concept to see how this works. So I'm going to explain what the problem is and how I solved it essentially with Azure IoT and mainly Azure IoT Central. So what we're going to be doing is looking how can I manage IoT devices from within a Canvas Power App. Okay, I'll describe what my solution is. I've got some slides. It's going to be a bit of demo as well, and the question and answers if you have any at the end. You're quite welcome to ask. I'll monitor the chat. So welcome, thank you. It's 1 a.m. You're very, very dedicated. Okay, let's just dive in then. Click move forward. So yes, this was the problem. They wanted an app for frontline workers to manage IoT devices. These were technicians who were going out, who needed to be able to access the details of IoT devices, see the telemetry, get alerted when things went wrong. But internally, technically, they didn't have much experience of Azure. They had no development experience, no developer skills. So they were using the Power Platform. But they said, okay, I'm finding it hard. How do I connect my IoT devices, which somebody else has set up for them, with the Power Platform? How can I create a nice usable application using the Power Platform? They wanted a low-code, no-code approach. And that's what started this off as an exercise, as a proof of concept on how we could actually do this. So when you look at Azure and look what's available in it, I'm just going to talk, I'm not sure how much you've seen today, so I'm not going to go over all. There were some really nice diagrams in the last section about Azure Architect diagrams. I'm going to show you some more architecture diagrams because I'm an architect. I like diagrams. But I just want to show you, this is the breadth of all the IoT. Well, there's actually more than this now, because I originally did this slide over a year ago. Okay, so there's a number of different bits when you're building Azure to start with. You've got all what I call the PaaS parts, all the platform as a service. So that's the IoT Hub, it's the DPS, it's time series analytics, it's Azure Stream Analytics, it's all working at the edge, all those other things, IoT device weight. To be honest, they're great, but it takes a lot of effort to get in and set up with. You need to know what you're doing. It's a hard drive. The thing about IoT is it's not just those bits. You then need to worry about where's my data, how I'm going to store it, where's my cold storage, where's my hot storage, and how we're going to do that analytics. And you often end up linking IoT into all those other things like logic apps. Putting the data out now, it would be into what's the new, I forgot the name of it now. Azure Synapse would be where I'm going to store and analyze my data and create visualizations. I'll be using machine learning on that data as well, running Azure functions to maybe do some calculations and pre-process my data. So there's an awful lot to get into for somebody starting in IT, especially in the Azure. There's all these services and it's overwhelming. Now we do have some. There were some solution accelerators pre-configured, and the Project 15. There's another great example of a pre-configured setup which sets all this up for you, because actually that's the hard thing. Provisioning in 15 minutes, that's great, because it's going to take you several days to do it yourself manually to set these architectures up, and then you really need to know how to tune them and mess around. A lot of the time you just set them up once and forget about them. And actually there's some really good capabilities in with the Azure IoT, but it does require a lot of work. Well, there are two SaaS solutions, software as a service solution. There's Azure IoT Central. And when I was actually presented with this problem, Azure IoT Central had just come out. I'd actually just learned about it at Ignite, and I was like, whoa, this is really exciting. I'll talk about what Azure IoT is. But my background is actually in Dynamics. My main job has been Dynamics and the Power Platform. And I implement field service solutions, field service solutions are about going out, fixing things at remote locations. So sending a technician out to fix something. It's about scheduling that work, making sure we talk about having the right technician at the right place at the right time with the right parts, and make sure you set the technician up for success. And with Dynamics Field Service, there is a thing called Connected Field Service, which is essentially a pre-packaged Azure IoT integration. It configures. So when you deploy Connected Field Service, you just press a few buttons. It goes and deploys an Azure IoT Hub, Logic Apps, a load of others, DPS. It deploys all those PaaS services behind for you. So again, it's like a pre-setup, and you just use it, and it just communicates. So Dynamics can communicate with Azure IoT Hub and then connect out to the devices. So that's actually how I got into doing IoT initially. I was doing field service solutions, and we needed to do some connected field service. And it is a SaaS solution. It's deploy, and you don't need to touch Azure. You're paying for it. You pay for all those services, and it helps to understand it a bit. But I could not have set that up myself because there's a lot of moving parts. So that's what the scope has. So when I looked at it, okay, what can I use to do this? What can I use to do this no-code solution? And not just no-code, but no complexity. And let's keep it nice and simple. And put a nice, friendly front end on my IoT device, and something people can run off their mobile phone. Because Power Apps, I can run on my mobile device. So access anywhere, deploy easily is a big part of Canvas Apps. And Canvas Apps are a no-code application platform. I'll show you, if we get time, we'll show you that platform. So what I did is I looked at IoT Central. Okay, so IoT Central, you can get going if you haven't looked at IoT Central and you want to get in. If you're beginning with IoT, you want to get going with something. Try something. IoT Central is the best place to start, in my opinion, because you don't need any IoT experience. You don't need to know about all the ins and outs. It's a web application. So a SaaS application typically has a web front end that hides all the services from you. And you just go and set it all up. You just sign up for it. It's free for 7 days with no commitment. You get 5 devices. And even if you sign up on standard 0, you get 2 free devices. You need a Azure subscription to sign up for standard. But it's free for 2 devices for sending a few messages a day, which is great for playing around with that. And it's more than just, it gives you, everything's all through click and point. There's no code. It's got visual representation of data. That's one of the things when you do IoTs. How do I get my visual representation? That's one of the hardest things. And that's included in IoT Central as part of the product. So all you do is you go to IoT Central and just create a new application, and then you can choose from there's a number of sample applications, pre-configured setups that you can do. And there's more all the time, so it's very easy to get started. I just create a new app, pick from a template, and off I go. It's got pre-configured analytics and sample devices and everything that you want to do. Or you can start from blank if you want, which is what I did because I'm used to doing that. But initially when I did, I picked a template and off I went. And start away, give it a name, and it provisions everything for me. And what's really nice is I can actually start playing around with IoT without any physical device. Because what you can do is you can set up a simulated device, which is sending random data to you. So it sends telemetry as if you had a real physical device. And you can test out your whole logic and your whole processing for you. So it's got a whole load of functionality, which I'll show you in a little bit. And what you can do is you can set up rules. So this is really the first thing for me is I need to know when something's gone wrong. So what we've got in IoT Central is the ability to create alerts or to cause something to happen. So basically you define some rules which are based on the telemetry or on events, and then you can do different actions. You can send an email. Not going to happen a lot, but I can call a Logic app. I can call Power Automate Flow. I can even call it Azure Function, or I can call it any webhook. So if you know about webhooks, I can call anything. I can trigger something to happen that can cause something else to happen. So it's got a really nice ability to trigger action when something's gone wrong. And you can build some quite sophisticated lists. Now, you can't do as much as you can, say, in Azure Stream Analytics, which has a load of, but you can do your sort of average rolling 5-minute window. So that I think I've got one on here. So over an average, if the temperature is greater than 80 over an average 5-minute window, rolling window, we can trigger an alert, and that can go off to whatever I want it to be. Because once I'm into Azure Functions, I can go anywhere. Once I'm into Power Automate and Logic Apps, I can go anywhere and do anything. And webhooks are just generic. I can call that anything outside anywhere. And there are a number of template devices. I'm not sure if the Raspberry Pi, because what's actually happened is we're actually on Azure. We're on IoT Central version 3 now. I originally started on version 1, then we went to version 2, which had these templates in, and version 3 did not have, when it got released, didn't have so many templates. It didn't actually have the MX chip. I'm going to show you this on my screen. I don't know if you can see it now. This is what's known as an MX chip, or an AZ3166. It's about $35. It's got 7 sensors in it. It connects to Wi-Fi. It's got a temperature, humidity. I can shake it sensor. You can. It's got a little LCD screen. And if I was doing this in person, I'd be handing these around because I've got a whole series of them and just connect them in. IoT Central version 3 didn't have a template for it a week ago. It does today. I actually went in. There's a new template for it. I actually built the template by hand because there wasn't one. And I'm going to do that. So the template devices make it very easy just to get going. And that's what, that's the screenshot of this little device. It's got keys. It's got pressure sensors. It's not very accurate, but it's really good to get going and playing with a physical device. Other things I use, I've got Raspberry Pis. I just got a Raspberry Pi Pico, which I'm using. I think you may have seen, if you're on Pete's talk a few hours ago, he used a Raspberry Pico to control a robot arm. So lots of different devices, very easy to hook into Azure. So that's what I'm going to use. I'm going to use a simulated device for what I'm going to do. So let's have a quick look at IoT Central. So let's go in. Where is it gone? Here's it. So I've already got an app, and I'll answer your questions in a minute. I'll just get into this. So I've gone in, and I've created an app, and I put a little icon in. So we're in a dashboard. You can edit and change the dashboard. And why am I not getting data there? Sorry, let's just check that. Let me just stop and start that. So I'm just running a little simulated device, and it's decided not to play. Okay. I should be seeing some data in here. So I've got here just a couple of little diagrams. I get graphical information about some of my data that's coming in. I can have a look at that data. But if I go down here, go look at devices, I've got a couple of devices set up. I've got one simulated and one on a simulator, which is a simulated website. I'll just show you this now, as you were just there. This is a web page you can go to. You can simulate, and all I've done is got a connection string to connect to my Azure IoT Central, and it's going connecting. It's sending telemetry messages. I can see them down here. It's sending me messages every few seconds, sending me temperature and humidity figures in, and I'll be able to see that data in my IoT Central. So this is something you can just play with if you haven't got a physical device. Other things here, you can actually set up a simulated device. So I just created a new simulated device. So that is it's simulated within IoT Central. It's just generating random data. So every few seconds you see it's generating all this telemetry data, which I can then look at and analyze and see what I want to do. And maybe see if I haven't got my rules right, haven't got my logic right. And I can go here and look at analytics. I can go to see my devices and go see what to. Let's look at temperature. Let's have a look at this over time and group by device. What's it going to say? Let's analyze. Let's see my temperature data and drill down and play around with it. So I've got my, let's get my length. Oh yeah, gets a bit messy there. Take average data. Let's take some to hide it out. So it's got a nice way of looking at my. Let's go zoom in a bit, make it a bit nicer. Oh, it's still very busy. Oh yeah, that's one that's a bit less. Yeah, so there's my data. You can see this is because it's a simulated device to event random things. So what do I find most interesting use of IoT? For me, interesting uses are around, right now what I'm seeing is around factories, around monitoring production equipment and to be able to track what things are happening. I mean, I've been involved in a situation over the years where going back, we had cameras looking at production lines to spot failures in the products coming off. But I've now seen us using specialist cameras or specialist equipment which use AI, which can then trigger alerts in. So then standalone needs to trigger IoT alerts, and we get all that messaging in. We're able to get analysis of the data over time, but also generate real-time action. Other ones I've seen are around monitoring wind turbines. They're the sort of classic ones for me. And for business leaders interested in Internet of Things, for me, there's been a lot of issues around where does IoT fit. I think you've probably seen some good use cases today, but a lot of IoT products really don't go beyond the proof of concept. They get so far, and then it's okay, what's in it for me? Where's it going to make? And you have to think about how it can save money. And one of my favorite examples is from Copenhagen. They had sensors put in all the rubbish bins that are around the city. And those sensors determined how full those rubbish bins were. And what they did is essentially sent a message when they got rubbish bins getting full to get it to get picked up. So rather than having somebody drive around every day, emptying the bins every day, they only went when they were full. And they save 50%. When you start getting creative about what sort of things you can do, it's very easy to find really big savings. So my message to leaders is it can save you money, because it can reduce the need to necessarily go out and fix things. What we call preventative maintenance, where you're effectively going out and doing something on a weekly or monthly basis, because you have to do it that often to make sure things don't go wrong in the meantime. So maintaining stuff. If you switch to IoT and go to what we call proactive maintenance, we only fix things when they're about to go wrong. We can predict that something's going to fail. We can monitor a device and see, okay, it's starting to misbehave. We can then use AI to predict when it's going to fail. And then we can fix it before it fails. So you keep on running. And those sort of values are unmeasurable. Keeping people running is keeping something, like, think about how much a production line costs if it's down. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars an hour. So you want to keep things running. And that's to say to business leaders, that's where the value is. It can reduce downtime by fixing things before they go wrong. That's where, for me, IoT comes in. Right, as well as this, I'll just show you some of the templates that we've got. There's a number of templates to show you the breadth of devices. Lots of different things. I've got an Azure Sphere, other devices all clicked in. Because they've got sample templates, you can just get going really quickly with this. Whereas if you're doing it on Azure IoT Hub, you've got to go set up all the digital twins and all the properties, everything else. I can just keep going. So these are ones that are pre-configured. Actually, I did see the Azure IoT. There's a few more come on recently. So it's quite broad. Other things I just want to show you here. This is what I'm going to use. This is a secret to my solution: the ability to export data. Normally with SaaS solutions, it's very hard to initially get data in and out. And when IoT Central first came out, you couldn't get. It was just a web application. You couldn't do anything. And then they introduced this data export service. Originally, it was for getting data out, telemetry data out, so I could do it in Power BI. And they created a whole series of a Power BI set of data. Where is it? Gone to the wrong one. My other workspace. So it's actually got a whole IoT Power BI reporting behind it. Unfortunately, it's not working because this only works with version 2 of IoT Central, not with version 3 that we are now. So I've set this up and it won't work. It's not connected because the data export is different between version 2 and version 3. So I set this up and it shows you a nice way of analyzing your telemetry data. So that's what they originally put it in for, was the ability to dump data out into Azure Data Lake so that you could, or an Azure storage account, so that you could then just go pull it into Power BI, because IoT Central did not give us access into its underlying data stores. We can't see beneath it. I can't see the IoT Hub that's underneath it. I know there's one there, but I can't touch it. That's what a SaaS solution does. So they added in some more destinations. We've actually now got the ability to go push out data out to event hubs, Azure Blob Storage, service bus queues, and webhooks as well now. So I can export the data, so my telemetry data. And actually, when I export out, I've actually got a number of different things I can export out. I can export out telemetry, property changes on things, so a property changing on a device, or maybe an event lifecycle. So that's a new device being provisioned or a device being deprovisioned. And we can pass data out. So this gives us the ability to export data out, and I'm going to make use of that in my solution. So it gives a nice, easy way of monitoring and managing my system and just be able to see what's happening with my devices. So anybody can use this. And you've got actually different user roles as well. So you can have people who just see the dashboards and monitor the devices, whereas, or if you're an admin like me, I can do anything I like. So it's a really good solution and a really good front end for a lot of organizations, especially in like remote monitoring scenarios where you want to monitor, you're just using IoT to monitor things, maybe then take smaller actions. It's a very, very good platform for that. So that's just very quick run through, because I could spend all day talking about IoT Central, but I just want to talk about my solution. But let me just talk about what we gain from IoT Central versus doing it in the PaaS world. So it's very quick to deploy. I mean, I got that up and running. It's in a few minutes. It literally is. Click in a few minutes and get everything up and running. You don't need to be detailed skills. You don't need to know about Azure Stream Analytics. You don't need to run the SQL queries, which are difficult if you've never done them before. It has very simple pricing. It's quite low priced. I mean, when you look at Azure IoT, you have to price everything up. There are so many parts because everything's built separately. You've got a hub, you've got logic apps, you've got storage, you've got functions, all of which are all priced independently. You don't get one price. With IoT Central, you do. So it's nice and simple to understand. But we miss an awful lot. We don't get the flexibility to do things. In any SaaS application, there's always a trade-off between implementing quickly versus being able to configure everything. I can't insert my own machine learning algorithms in the data. The rules that I do are very basic rolling time averages, or even just hit that point. It's the threshold breached. I can't put like machine learning algorithms in that I've built. I don't get all the the really nice things you get in Azure Stream Analytics and TS and Stream Insights as well. And if you've looked at Stream Analytics, there's an inbuilt anomaly detection. We don't get that in IoT Central as far as I'm aware. But it's great for getting started. And I say it's really good if you're just doing IoT remote monitoring. It's very easy for that. And I think it's a good place to get started and try things out, especially with the simulated devices. Actually, one of the hardest things in IoT is getting these physical devices hooked up, because I have to connect this to a Wi-Fi and I have to connect it up and then get it all working. I know how to do it. I can do it in my sleep, but it's very hard. I know when I've done training with people with this, it can take people a good few hours to get it working. So IoT Central, I always say, it's great. But when I came to do it in my solution, I had an issue. Because it's a SaaS solution, but I wanted to run a power up off it. I can't query its database because it has its own web portal. And although I could get the telemetry out, I couldn't get the devices. I needed the ability to actually get the device name out, the details of the device. It put out the telemetry, some basic details, but didn't give me that ability. And my threshold triggers were fairly basic. But for a lot of the time, that's enough. But it's good to get started. So what I did is I'm going to talk you through my 3 attempts at this. So my first attempt is, okay, let's use Azure IoT Hub. And I'll store the telemetry in table storage and Azure table storage in my storage account. I'll use Azure Functions to process the data. And then what I can do is I can create, in Power Apps, I can create what's called a custom connector. And all the custom connector is it wraps the Azure Functions. So I'll create the Azure Functions to get the data to and from the IoT Hub. And then I'll create a custom connector in Power Platform, which all it does is essentially wrap that function and make it available to my Canvas app. So this is what it looks like in an architecture diagram. Well, actually, I stole this one from somebody else's, but this is essentially the model I was following. Somebody did this talk at Ignite about 3 years ago, where essentially we're getting our data coming in on the left-hand side into an IoT Hub. It's using Stream Analytics to analyze the data and put it in storage. It's using Azure Functions to work out what it's doing. And then we've got a series of Azure Functions with a custom connector onto Power Apps. So this was the model I looked at first. and it's great and it works. But I need a developer because I've got to write Azure functions. I need to understand how all this works. I've got functions, I've got to read and write from storage. I need to create, at the time, creating a custom connector. I had to go into Postman and create this, the Postman collection just to understand. It's just to create the Swagger file. It's okay once you know how to do it, but it's hard the first time. It's not coding, but you need that understanding of how the API is working. Okay, so a lot of moving parts here. So I thought, okay, this is going to be hard. I can do it, but how can we maintain it? It doesn't meet my low code requirement. So I was actually started on this was what I actually started with initially. I thought, okay, this is going to take me too long. It's not what we want. It's not going to meet their requirement. So I binned that one. So then what I did is I went to plan B, which is to use Azure IoT Hub, but then use Power Automate to trick the thing. So this is essentially my little model. I would store the data in Cosmos DB. So I'd use Stream Analytics to pass the data into Cosmos DB. And what you can do with Cosmos DB is you can trigger a Power Automate flow. Okay, so when you can hook events off Cosmos DB data being created. So essentially, if I get something that's out of bounds, it's Stream Analytics, an event threshold being breached or an anomaly, create a record or row in Cosmos DB. That will trigger a Power Automate flow, which will then I can then use that in my Power App. The only issue with this is to get this working is a little bit tricky. There's a lot of moving parts in there, and I was really struggling. I could do the first bit where I was getting the telemetry. What I couldn't do is go back and push the commands back to the IoT Hub. I could view the telemetry, I could see it in my Power App, but when I wanted to issue a command, I didn't know the device ID. Because when what happened is I lost that information as it came through of what device is being created. So what device is registered on the hub? Because you need to know its ID, its unique ID to be able to send a message to the device. And I was able to get around it by, if I installed the Dynamics 365 Connected Field Service solution, which I mentioned earlier, that actually does that. That actually handles the device, because what it does, it sucks the device information out, but it uses a lot of logic out. So there's a whole lot of other stuff gets created. And they didn't want to have that. That again was not what they wanted in the solution. So I went to plan C, and this was about the time where at that time, we only had the data export to blob storage for the Power BI solution. So every minute, it would put out telemetry data into an Azure storage account, actually blob storage account, and then my Power BI could pick it up. That was what it was developed for. But the only trouble with that is it only showed telemetry. And as I was actually doing this proof of concept, they actually added in the ability to have other export options other than blob storage. So the service bus, I could post events to the service bus or to Event Hub and call a webhook. So we had those additional capabilities. And the other thing that was nice about them, I wasn't restricted, which we were initially with the first one, to being in the same Azure subscription. It could be in any Azure. I could push out to anywhere else, any other Azure. And it was effectively immediate hot storage. I could do real-time monitoring of this data. So I can actually push messages out to the service bus from my data. So all I do is set up my data export in IoT Central, and it pushes out the data for me. So it's very, very rapid. It's very, very good. So that's what I did. I created a data export service where devices. The other thing I also got at that time, we got devices being pushed out. So my device change, I had a device that gets pushed out to service bus. Then what I do is I have a Power Automate flow that runs when anything hits that service bus, and I can then go create that device. I know what the device is. I have a separate Power Automate flow, again, that fires from the rules in IoT Central. So when a threshold gets breached, it's going to generate me an alert. And I was then going to create a Canvas app to show that data. And it's got a screenshot of as it was then. And I've also could then use Power Automate to send a command back to the device, because IoT Central has a Power Automate connector, which means Power Automate can connect to it and send messages, but I needed to know the device ID. And that's the thing that was missing till I got this data export, that thing at the top that opened this all up to me. And that's what I actually built. I needed a little bit of Azure, so I still need to use Azure Service Bus, but I just create it. I just go into Azure Portal, create a service bus, create a queue, and that's it. And then all I do in my IoT Central is connect to that. Say, I want to use the service bus as that as the connector, and I want to go and pass this data. And then, because I know Power Automate, an Azure Service Bus queue is a connector in Power Automate. I can just easily connect to it. It's not something that's going to be difficult for me to do. So it gave me, I did no code for this solution. So it met my requirements. And that's how I built it. So let's have a look at what I actually did. Let's have a look at this solution and how it works. So what I'm going to do is, to start off with, we're going to create a new device. So I'll just show you what I've got in my system right now. I'll just show you the app. Let me run the app and get that up running. So here's my app. Let me just play this. This is a Canvas app if you've never seen one before. So here's my Canvas app. What it's doing is showing me I've got 2 devices here already. So what I'm going to do, just refresh the data. Let's make sure up to date. So what I'm going to do is go to IoT Central, and I'm going to create a new device. Pick the template. It's that one. It's going to give it an ID. So this is what I was missing. This device ID is the thing that I was missing. It's here. And I'm going to make it a simulated device because I'm not going to set one up. So it's going to create one for me. What that's doing behind the scenes is the data export service, which is running, is exporting that device data out. Let's have a look at this one, just what it's doing. It's pushing it out onto my service bus. Okay, so that's going out. It's enabled. It's running. And it's not going to be that. Hopefully, it's going to be quick, but it's not going to be that. Where are we? Back in here. Yeah, oh, I can't believe it's that quick. So that's gone from IoT Central to Service Bus. It's run a Power Automate flow, which has created a record in Microsoft Dataverse, and I'm now able to access it. So I can now see the telemetry on here. It normally takes it a little while to get. There's no telemetry come through yet. It normally takes a new device a few minutes to start generating device. Let's have a look at it. It will be starting to generate data. Oh, I know why it's not coming through. It's generating telemetry. There it is. I get all that data. Let's make that a bit bigger for you. So it's getting temperature around 32 degrees. So what I'm going to do is, to trigger more data, I'm going to change my rule because I've got it set at it's got to be over 80 degrees. So it's hardly generating me any data. So it's only triggering my alerts and sending data through to over 80. So I'm going to make it over 30. That's going to hopefully flood my data now, because most of the data has been generated over 30 degrees. So if we now look and go back to devices, that one there, that's now generating. Will do. Let's refresh it. Here's normally it's every few seconds it generates some, but we'll be getting more data being sent through. Let's have a look at the other. Let's have a look at the other one. Here's this one here. So we're getting telemetry every couple of minutes. We can see that coming through, kicking data. And then all I've got here. So I now go back. I can just go and have a look at this. Let's refresh the data. Let's just go in. Here's what I did earlier. Let's look at this. It's just got one. It's got one alert through. No data. Why is the data not showing? Oh, here it is. Here's the data I got. Let's have a look at this one. This is a bit more data. Here it is, 29. Oh, I think I must have changed this. I should have had. It should be showing the temperature. It's not showing the temperature. It should be doing. That was my fault. But what I could also do from here is I could also go and analyze. I've actually put a little Power BI dashboard on here. So I'm actually analyzing the data. And I can actually see the Power BI. So this is actually using direct query. If you know that, it's showing me what's going on in the data and messages coming through. I can actually go and see the data. So, oops, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I've actually clicked on and opened the report. So in here, I've got the data. So imagine me as a technician. I can see the history easily. And that was trivial for me to do. It's in my other Power BI dashboard. Where are we? I'll go to this Power Platform IoT. So I built this little dashboard. Where are we? Just showing me little bits of data, and I just pulled the bits out. So showing me that, and I can filter my data. It's not on automatic refresh, but if I refresh the data, we see the other device in there when it comes through. It takes a few minutes. There is a bit of a lag, but I can now see the trends of data and see how many alerts I've got in. Let me just force the data to refresh. So I'm telling Power BI to refresh, and we should actually see in a bit more data come through. But the idea is, you see now I've got a little app that's showing me everything that I need to do. And then the final bit is down here. If I go into a device, let me just show you this back to the simulator. I've got this little simulator. I'll put this link in the chat because it is actually quite useful. Can I do the chat? How do I actually can't see how to write my own chat messages. So I'll paste it here, so hopefully Simon can retweet it. But you can get to here. You just go into it and you just set it to run. And it's generating telemetry. And it does other things like this. You can shake it. And press the buttons, and it does other things. I haven't got it all hooked up, but what I can't do is I can't send a message to it. If I had a physical device, this would work, but what I can do is I can do this. I can do a reset device. So let's go into the simulator, and I'm going to send, let's do a reset device. So allow me just to manually from my phone. So this is a message that's going to go from my phone up to the Power Platform. For the Power Platform, it's going to Power Automate Flow. That's going to connect to IoT Central to tell it to send a command, and the IoT Central will then send that message to the device, all in a few seconds. Done. Now, if I was lucky, you'd see the message show on there showing reset, but it doesn't quite work with this. I can show you that it did work if I actually go into my device, go into the simulator, and you can see the commands here. If I show you the command history, it should show the reset. Okay. And you can see they're failing. Obviously, I was trying it earlier on. I was failing with sending messages. They weren't good. You can see it. I was sending that reset message. So that's my end-to-end solution. And what I've now got is a very simple bit. If we go to the Azure Portal, I'll show you what I've got in terms of setup for this, if you're interested. I'll go to all the resources. Most of these resources that you see, the storage account, the SQL Server, the data factory, the function app, the app service plan, and the SQL database are all to do with the Power BI bit. If I didn't have the Power BI, all I would need is a service bus and my IoT Central application. That would be all that you would see. Oh, and a storage account as well, because I'm putting the telemetry data out to storage. But essentially, all I did was create a service bus. All I did was create a storage account. I didn't have to do anything else in the Azure Portal. That was it. The Power BI, all this other Power BI stuff is installed through. It's actually just deploy. You just go to, if you do Power BI, can't remember what it is. It's the IoT Central. There it is. This is what I tried to deploy. Here, this is what I deployed. To create all that reporting. You just do that. It's you run it now, and it goes and deploys. It creates the service. It creates the SQL database, the Azure Data Factory. It actually tells you there what it all does, and then it does all that work for you. It takes about half an hour to deploy and build. So again, none of this took me very long. And if I just show you the Canvas app, let's just go out of it, but back in there. Let's just show you this so you can actually see what's actually in it. There's not very little in here. When I look at, if I look at my Power Platform solution, which I'll get ready here, here's my app. Oh, that's being annoying. Here's what I've got. I've got a number of, effectively, I've got a couple of tables for the data. I've got a Canvas app. And then I've got 3 flows. The flows are what do the communication between my app, my Power Platform, and my thing. So I'll just show you this one. For when I get the IoT message, I'll just show you this one. Where's the IoT alert? Here it is. Let's open that up as well, so we can just see that before we're done. So here's the app. It's quite simple. There's very little to do. There's very little I did in this. It literally took me about half an hour to set up. It's just showing me the data. And I'll show you the reset device command. This is where it resends that. Here it does. It's going to run. It's going to run my send to IoT device, which is one of my flows. And this is my flow that I did. So this is what they did. So this is the main one that triggers the telemetry. So it says when a rule is fired in IoT Central. So I just pick what the rule is. So I pick my IoT Central application. I pick my rule. Then I set up a couple of variables, and the telemetry all comes as a JSON file. Okay, so I just need to understand how to pass that. And once I've got that, I get all the details. I then go get the device because I need to go find the device in my database to map it correctly. This is the secret. And then I just go and create my alert, and all I do is create the record. It's a very simple: create it, populate it, pull the details from that, the device name, the telemetry value, the temperature. That's what goes into my data first database, which my app shows. So, how much time have I got? I've got 3-4 minutes. This always is a bit of a time where I could go on for ages, but just want to show you how easy it was. The key was getting Power Automate, and the real ability to get this was the ability to export the data out of IoT Central. Actually, IoT Central now has an API, which allows you to do a little bit more. So I think if I was doing this again, I might be using the API, but this works. It initially took it only a day and a half to build it, but 6 hours of that was trying to figure out how to get the Power BI set to work. I could have done it in less than a day. And actually, when I set it up again for tonight, because I didn't have the session, it probably took me 3 or 4 hours to do everything end to end. So it's not particularly difficult. So what I was going to do next, I was going to do a little bit more about sort of the telemetry, using some more features, making a better Power BI solution. The Power BI solution isn't very good. I want to add in my own anomaly detection. We have the ability within the Power Platforms, I think, called AI Builder, that allows me to build AI models, maybe do my own modeling on analysis on the data to make it better. Possibly use the Event Hub because if you get higher volumes, service bus can get overwhelmed. The Event Hub can really start handling the volumes, and maybe again use a bit of Azure Cognitive Services in there, which again are very easy to consume in the IoT in the Power Platform. So Power Platform for me is, and I've seen what actually made me think of the Power Platform initially when I had this problem was I was at Ignite and I watched the talk from one of the IoT team, and I thought I recognised that user interface, and it was a Canvas app. So I went up to him afterwards and said, "Is that Canvas app?" He goes, "Yes." I said, "Why have you built a Canvas app?" He says, "Well, because it saves me having to build a web application to show my data. I can do it just very easily in a Canvas app." So Canvas apps or Power apps are really powerful for enabling you to visualize data, and then put Power BI as well in there, Power Automate to look it all together. And you get really great solutions, which you can help people to help build.